hello and welcome. So let me start off before I introduce my men of the hour with why I decided to do this show and look more into the gun laws in New Jersey. As I've been watching television recently, we've seen people in different states stand on city hall steps in places, right? With guns, branding guns. And it's like, wow, they get to do that? Like, is that legal, right? And so we see people protesting with guns just to reopen the states back up, right? And it just looks odd because when we protest here, right, civil disobedience is always respectful, and you tend to see there's much more power in individuals holding guns. And so I wanted to look and see, well, why is it that we're not holding guns? And what I uncovered is that there's some really strict gun laws, right? And I don't know how we're supposed to safeguard ourselves. And that concerns me. And as a person who's concerned about children, right, and safeguarding children, it's only natural that we're also, really concerned about this. Now, I didn't know literally anything about gun laws. Guns never interest me, right? But now that I'm seeing, and let's be honest, domestic terrorism is at the heights that I've never seen or would imagine in my lifetime. So that's what tonight is about, just exploring to see what's going on there. And with that being said, my co-host for the evening is going to be Tarmel Pittman. Everyone knows Tarmel. Tarmel, you can say hi to everybody. And also, we're going to be introducing to you guys, and I don't want to mistake anyone, Alejandro, and you're going to say your last name.
Roubian,
because I didn't want to mispronounce it. And
it's all right.
We also have Daniel Francisco, and I'm going to let them tell you a little bit about who they are, and I'm going to put the camera right on them.
Great. Thanks for having me on tonight. My name is Alejandro. As you said, I got involved in this movement on May 25th, 2011, when I lived in Newark, and an innocent man behind me got murdered. And I started looking into New Jersey's self-defense laws, New Jersey's gun laws, and so forth. And at that point, I became an activist because I firmly believed in the right to self-defense. And growing up in the nice suburbs, we never witnessed anything of that nature. And living in Newark for a couple of years at a time, I started realizing the discrimination that's going on and the type of double standard that if there's a crime that occurs in some nice, rich, white suburban neighborhood, it's heavily covered. But every day there was murders occurring in our inner cities, especially in the area of Newark that I lived in, or in the city that I lived in, and nobody cared. And nobody talked about it. It wasn't covered by the news. So I started getting more involved. I started speaking up about these issues. I started fighting for our rights to be able to protect ourselves, because the people that were really being affected the most by our draconian and racist gun laws were the minorities living in our inner cities, because they live in the most dangerous neighborhoods and the most dangerous towns and cities throughout the state. And they needed this ability to protect themselves more than anybody else. The police were never showing up every time there was ever an incident, and I had to call the police, or the phone would just ring, or 911 wouldn't pick up. And you're really out for yourself at that point because nobody else is coming to protect you. It was actually around the same time that I found out the government has no legal obligation to protect you. That was upheld by not only New Jersey law, but also the United States Supreme Court upheld,
and district courts,
that the police have no legal obligation to do anything to protect you except to enforce the law.
Now, Sheila, your facial expression that I'm seeing right now,
yeah,
that register of surprise, right? That register of surprise, it's a common misconception. We're actually trying to participate in a campaign right now where we're trying to get that message out, and we're getting censored on it. To give you a little background on me, I'm Daniel Francisco. I'm originally, my whole family are residents of Newark. My parents are Portuguese immigrants. They lived in the Ironbound for years.
Right.
All of my, sorry?
I'm agreeing, like, right.
Hey, Sheila, I only see you guys one at a time. Like, is that how it's supposed to be?
Yeah, so what I do is I kind of switch the camera up as they're talking for emphasis and switch it back. I'm getting more technological savvy.
Very nice.
Continue.
So yeah, my whole family's from Newark. We all filtered in through Newark and lived there at some point in our life. Go back to Newark all the time to eat, shop, play. The city has a lot of meaning to me and my family on a personal level.
Right.
And I actually grew up in a home that didn't have firearms. I never shot a firearm while I was a minor ever.
Right.
I eventually moved out of my home after I attended Rutgers University and had a job where I was in a very dangerous neighborhood, and all of my coworkers and my customers carried weapons, some lawfully, some unlawfully. But because of an incident where I was accosted a few times, that's what kind of got me into learning about firearms. So it's really funny because we both got into it organically, right? We weren't inculcated with gun culture growing up.
Right.
And we come from very different backgrounds, yet arrive at the same conclusion. And as I started to, similar to what Alex said, when you really start to learn about how gun control laws even came into existence, they are always 100% of the time rooted in, sadly, racial discrimination, especially in the South. It's a little known fact that, one of the heroes of the right is President Ronald Reagan, right? Very few people know that in 1967, the Black Panthers would used to protest in Sacramento in front of the State House, and they would carry rifles with them. Did you know that a Republican president, soon to be president a few years, a decade after that, is the one that was actually responsible for banning open carry in California because he didn't want the Black Panthers protesting in front of the State House? If you look at historical Jim Crow laws, if you go into the South in the 1800s, they would do really funny stuff where when you look at it at face value, it really sounds like the highly lofty moral things that a lot of modern statists do. They used to do stuff like this. They used to say, okay, you can have a gun, but we're going to pass a law that says you can't have these types of cheap guns because they're unsafe. And now, historically, who would have been poor, right, in those neighborhoods? Minorities. So now the guns that they could afford were illegal. It would be no different than the federal government saying, listen, cars are very dangerous. We want you to be able to, it's your right to, travel freely, but you have to buy a Lamborghini or a Ferrari, and anything cheaper than that is illegal. You're basically taking away everyone's right to drive a car. So, or privilege rather to drive a car. So this is no different. If you really trace the history and look it up, every gun law at some point is rooted in that basis, and it just continues today on a different angle. It's a lot of people have trouble distinguishing it, but it's usually modern leftists in cities like Newark and Patterson and Trenton, and they unequivocally, through our studies, make it more difficult to get a firearm permit in those cities than in the suburban neighborhoods.
Right. So what was really shocking to me that I didn't realize that, like you said, I never had a gun. I never thought about shooting a gun. But when you see people in other places right here in our country walking around brandishing weapons like it's the coolest thing ever, and you look into getting a gun. Like once I downloaded the application. It was a nightmare, the entire process of it. Can you share a little bit about the process and your experience with that?
Well, that's a great question, because in New Jersey, they passed that law of the process that you're talking about in 1966. And that was a direct response to when African Americans were rioting in Newark and arming themselves with firearms so that they can protect their neighborhoods.
Oh, wait. Not rioting. They were rebelling.
Rebelling. I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm sorry. Rebelling.
It's okay.
Good correction there. You're right. You always hear about the riots in Newark, but totally agree with you.
Wrong narrative. We didn't have media coverage for that either, really.
Yeah, exactly. So as they were rebelling and protecting their neighborhoods, the government of New Jersey, under the leadership of Arthur Sills, who was the Attorney General at the time, came up with this scheme so that they could make it as bureaucratic and complicated as possible for people to exercise their right to carry and possess a firearm under the guise of common sense public safety. And I have a copy of their testimony in the New Jersey Senate hearings where Arthur Sills and the director of Newark Public Safety was specifically saying, these people that are creating this violence, these rioting in Newark, are now coming into the suburban neighborhoods and spreading that violence. So what they were really saying was, Black people with guns are coming into our rich white suburban neighborhoods. We need to pass these laws so they can no longer get guns. And they made it so restrictive that you practically need an attorney to be able to navigate the whole process, as you found out firsthand that how cumbersome and complicated it was. And when I lived in Newark, I was able to get through the process, but a lot of my friends weren't able to do it. Why? Because they had to take a day off of their work to go pick up the application. they have to take another day off of work to get fingerprinted. You have to take another day off to go drop the application off. Oh, and guess what? The Newark Police Department and many other urban police departments, they don't allow you just to come in at any time. You have to come in on the hours of Monday morning between the hours of 9 and 11. Now, if you're making a minimum wage or working an entry-level job, just trying to make ends meet, what is the most critical and most vital time of the week? Monday mornings. So these are the types of obstacles that I would consider modern day Jim Crow laws that are designed specifically to target the minority and African American communities to make it as difficult, as expensive as possible, and cumbersome as possible so that you cannot exercise your right.
So it sounds like these laws need to be updated. I want to ask a quick question, and I'm going to go to my co-host to see if he has a question. You know, in advocating for education, I've always had a problem with the fact that the Amistad Act, even though it was passed in 2002, still hasn't been implemented yet, where they're teaching us, you know, about Black history, because so many of us don't know. And one thing that I found very interesting is that Martin Luther King, which they always like to talk about, but they don't talk about the fact that he was an advocate for gun laws. Can you elaborate on that a little bit for the audience?
I don't believe he was an advocate for gun laws, but I know he was a big supporter of the Second Amendment. He was an avid gun.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
For gun rights. For gun rights.
For gun rights. Like,
did you know that he was denied a firearm permit?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
He wasn't. Yeah, he was.
He was denied so his house would get bricks thrown at him. He'd have crosses burned, fire bombs. He had lots of threats and attacks on his life. And this is exactly what I was telling you earlier. In these predominantly Southern states, at that time, Southern Democrats, they would create these complicated licensing procedures to specifically keep people like him from getting armed. And we all know how Martin Luther King's life ended, right? We all know that.
So when you say, wait, when you say, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but just a small interjection. When you say to keep people like him, like, okay, we all know you didn't want the Black people to have guns, but in the context of the law, like, how was that worded? How was that overtly, or was it blatantly said?
So I'll bring it home, right? Because maybe Alabama is a little foreign to us, right? But I'll bring it home. In New Jersey, we have what's called let me put my fingers in the camera, justifiable need clause, right? So for you to be able to carry a firearm lawfully, meaning on your person outside your home, right? The way a police officer does, except concealed, right? Where you can't see it. In over 40 states in our country, anybody can get that permit as long as you're a non-criminal, right?
14 have constitutional carry.
Right, 14 of them actually have constitutional carry, which means you don't even need to apply. You're just 18 years old or 21, you buy the firearm and you can carry without
as long as you're not prohibited.
Right, but now in New Jersey, they add the justifiable need so that say say someone lives in Newark, or it doesn't really matter where you live. If you had attacks on your life, or you were in a bad neighborhood where you felt like you needed protection, protect your family when you walk around, you actually have to go through the entire background check process, the same one that you go through for the firearms ID card. You have to go through training. You have to go through the notarized documents. You have to show the serial numbers of the weapons. But the key part is you have to justify to the chief in your jurisdiction why you need the permit. And to say you need, oh, I want to protect myself. Oh, I live in a dangerous neighborhood. That's not a justifiable need. The amount of people that actually have an active carry permit in a state with 9 million people is about 18 to 1900, right? 1,800 in 9 million people. And that includes retired law enforcement. Okay, so ostensibly, nobody has carry permits that's a civilian, right? So you're asking, what kind of, do they actually explicitly target Blacks or Hispanics or whatever group you want to cite? Right, no, right. Of course it's not said in word. It's not said in legal doctrine. Right. It effectively stops anyone from being able to do it. And who most is at risk to be a victim of that type of crime? Is it the guy sitting in Ridgewood, New Jersey on a nice grass lawn? Or is it someone in Newark? I mean, I lived in Newark. It's someone in Newark. That's where you're more likely to get shot. So they, like I said, they don't call it, it's not a Black or Hispanic law. It's, well, you have to buy a safe gun. So it has to be an expensive gun that poor people can't afford. Or you need to have a justifiable need, which is a word that nobody can meet. It's a clause that nobody can meet in our courts. So if you were to try to apply right now, clean record, never been arrested, and you went to a superior court judge, even if your chief approves you, it then goes to a superior court judge, they will deny you. They will not accept you because you do not meet that stringent standard.
And I just want to actually follow up with that because we know of several cases, one personally, where a wealthy business owner that had properties in Newark, New Jersey, was issued a concealed carry permit only because he went to Newark to collect rent from tenants. So the judge came out and said, and I'm paraphrasing, that, okay, he carries large sums of cash. He's going to dangerous neighborhoods. He's had gang members threaten him. We'll give him a permit.
Well, first they first denied it. They were scared of the appeal.
Yeah.
Because the appeal would have actually damaged the state's ability to maintain that justifiable need. It was a risk. So the state actually gave this guy a permit just to make sure that that clause wouldn't be eradicated so that they could continue to ban people from getting guns.
But
so they only gave it to him to prevent that. That's the only reason.
And he had the expensive attorney, everything. Things that you and I could
This
not
is
afford.
a 5-figure problem.
Yes.
Right? It's not something a layman can solve.
So maybe we explore how to eradicate the clause, perhaps. I'm just thinking.
There is a way, but unfortunately, in the state of New Jersey, it's a partisan thing. Democrats will not support such a thing. Like Democrats love gun control. And this is not my words. You can look up Loretta Weinberg. You can look up any of our state assemblymen and senators. You can look up our governor, who told him to his face in a press conference, for me, a safer society is one with less guns and not more guns. And then he pointed to the superintendent of the state police and said, I want them on the hip of a guy like that. So here's the real crux. And this is the underlying message I want to transcend to your audience. The government likes to make this issue and other issues about a racial thing and a racial friction. And it's not that. That's what I want to be clear about. They try to make it about it's the white suburbanites against black urbanites or Hispanic urbanites, right? It's not about black, white, Hispanic, white, green, purple, red. It's not that. It's you and me. It's us versus the government. Because why does that clause exist? It's a Democratic legislature that would never overturn it, and a governor who will never overturn it. That's the sole reason why it's there. It can be struck like this if the legislature got together and reversed it, but they never will.
So, and let's be clear, they have guns.
Oh yes,
I know many. I know a lot of politicians in New Jersey that have a concealed carry permit. But so why do they think that their life is more valuable than our lives or your life or the people living in our urban neighborhoods in far more dangerous environments than these wealthy politicians are? It's sickening. It's double standard, and it's quite frankly very discriminatory on what they've done. And worse, they get away with it by tricking their own base, their own supporters into thinking that it's good for themselves. That's
not our politicians.
Oh,
what, in Newark or in
the country? Period. It's not our honest and upstanding politicians. Tarmel, any questions?
Well, I'm just, at this point learning and, just listening to the guys' great content. I like to appreciate you guys for doing the research and the due diligence as far as gun laws control. Because me personally, I know in our community, one of the biggest plights is even if we were to get rid of the justifiable need, most Black and Latino people in our communities, we have small, like felonies, nonviolent felonies that will prohibit us from even getting a firearms. And I think a lot of that was deliberate in our communities to make sure that we never get a firearms. A lot of people think their first conviction, whether it be criminal or not, is simply to prohibit us from getting a firearms. Right. And I think we need to, if we are to focus on eradicating the justifiable need, we also must eradicate the fact that those who have nonviolent crimes should also be allowed to purchase a firearm and get a firearm permit. So, and it makes also too with MLK, a little research, Martin Luther King wasn't killed by a bullet. He was actually suffocated once he arrived to the hospital. So a lot of people don't know that he was actually suffocated, you know, and
right. I was implying he was attacked and wasn't able to defend himself.
Yeah.
And a lot of his and I'm glad a lot of his the people who actually marched with him, they were packing heat.
You better believe it.
Yeah, they were packing heat.
But not him.
Yeah, I know. But they make it like he was opposed to guns and he didn't, you know, he didn't want guns around him. When in actuality, a lot of the people around him had, you know, the quote unquote most nonviolent person in American history had guns around him.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
That's a good
point. Yeah.
You know, I would love for you guys to, I have a piece of content that Alexander worked on about 4 years ago that is absolutely mind-blowing. It's based in Orange, New Jersey. You guys are familiar with Orange. You're familiar with the demographics of Orange. We actually had a detective there who is Black on camera who spoke to one of our members who went in there with an undercover camera, and he spoke to him at length for about a half hour to an hour. This detective, not knowing he was being recorded, admitted to multiple things. He admitted that he has denied permits to Black people, women, old people, handicapped people. Now, this is what I mean, right? The government wants you and me to look at each other and go, you look different than me, you're the problem. And then you look at me and go, I'm the problem, right?
I agree.
We are brothers, right? Brothers and sisters. The enemy is not, I'm not the one keeping you from getting a gun. The government is keeping you from getting a gun. This detective who is Black is proudly saying on our video, and you can look it up on our YouTube channel, it's called Future Victims of New Jersey. He's confessing to a handicapped man who has crutches that he would deny his permit purely because he's handicapped. Now, that's illegal for a multitude of reasons, but among many other reasons, he says, oh yeah, we have, you know, we live in Orange and we have a certain type of people that live here. This is his words, not mine.
Exactly.
And he openly boasts that he's denied them gun permits, not because they were criminals. Now, it goes even deeper than that. It's not only racial. Some of them will tell you, oh, you went to a psychiatrist one time because you had anxiety. Well, I'm going to deny you a permit because I can't trust you to have a gun. And you brought up felonies. That's a great point too. I personally feel like once somebody has been adjudicated guilty of a crime and has done their time in jail and has left, they should be free to be an American and enjoy whatever liberties they had before.
Yeah.
I agree with you, sir. That's, you know, I think it's personally ridiculous, but try telling that to our Democrat legislature. So that's the problem. It's not us, and the media and the government want you to focus on racial tension and other types of division. It's men and women, it's Black and white, it's union and non-union, right? They create all of these little groups so that the little groups are all busy fighting with one another and not recognizing that the enemy is the state and not us. And when I say us, I mean all of us. I'm not pointing to Alexander.
Right. Right. So this is some really good stuff. I would be just interested in hearing just a little bit more, like through your research, because clearly you guys are like really knowledgeable. And again, I can't thank you enough for coming on to share this knowledge with our community this evening. Is there anything that we could do to push for some policy or legislation to even consider allowing people who had felonies, especially if it was nonviolent, right?
Well, Sheila, real quick.
Yeah.
Can I say something real quick?
Sure.
What's the first step? Because now, you know, we have an audience and a platform. What do you think our first step would be to advocating, you know, to our people as far as mobilizing? What do you think our first step should be as far as mobilizing? Even though, you know, it may be a stretch to eradicate the justified need, but just to start, what do you think the first step should be in the urban communities as far as mobilizing to address the government as far as being able to obtain the firearms?
So that's a great question. And it's funny you mention it because it's actually quite relevant to something we're both trying to do today. The first step is the education aspect, right? So we discussed earlier and we said, look, the government has no duty to protect your life. And you guys were a little surprised. We actually are trying to do an urban campaign in Newark right now, where I'm trying to put up a billboard that discusses this very sentiment. And it's specifically targeted to the Black community to teach them about that very subject, that by law in Supreme, local, and district courts, they have all backed the police in having no personal liability for your safety. I've been trying to get this put up I've used about 6 different national brokers. I've called about 3 companies directly that operate out of New York and New Jersey. Not one has agreed to put it up because they don't want to touch that message. You see what I mean? Like, they don't even want to have that discussion. They don't want to even be associated with that message. So another thing I criticize people on the right of me that usually are the ones that purport and support these kind of laws, they need to be in your communities talking to you, right? When's the last time a major Republican in New Jersey was down neck, talking to a Black church or to a social group or to an after school group? It's very rare. The ones that are there are the Democrats, who are the majority in New Jersey, and they don't agree with this, right? They're not going to support something like this. So to me, it starts with education. We need to get in front of the minority communities in these cities who are witness to the worst crimes that our state ever sees. And we need to tell them, listen, I know you have a lot of trouble with police, with crime in your city. Did you know that the police have no duty to protect you? Did you know that if you call the police and say, someone just sent me a text message with their name, their number, saying they're coming to kill me at 4 o'clock today at my house. And if you call the police and say, in an hour, this guy, this name, this social security number is coming to kill me at 4 o'clock. And if the guy comes and kills you, you can't sue the police. You can't say it was racist. You can't say it was, they weren't paying attention or they didn't get to my house in time. None of those are valid legal excuses to sue the police. If you sue the police, if your state sues the police on those grounds, the case is thrown out instantly. And people don't know that. If people understood that the police don't have to protect you, their next thought would be, okay, how do I protect myself? And then groups like ours would love to get in contact with that community to show them how they can legally get around the hurdles, not only get around the hurdles, but also how we can advocate to get rid of the hurdles. And it all starts with education.
You made a good point really quick. Recently I had an incident that I needed police involvement with, and they would not come out.
Of course.
They would not.
What's your recourse?
And I told them, I said, I'm a homeowner, I'm a taxpayer, right? I'm trying to understand why you don't feel the need to come and help me with the situation. It was a situation with my car, but the thing is, it could have went left. And for 3 days, they just would not come out because they didn't think it was important enough. And so when you say that the cops are at no obligation, is that constitutional wise that you're speaking?
Yes.
Or?
Yeah, it's been settled in multiple courts. The one that's the most damning to me when you read it, you can Google this. It's on the first thing on Wikipedia, and it's one sentence that clearly says what I'm saying. Warren versus DC, 1981. If you look that up, it says, paraphrased, the police have no duty to provide individualized service, right? So look, if you look at the COVID-19 situation across the country, when we were at our peak, like back in March and April,
right,
many police departments were publicly advertising, if you call us about a robbery, we won't come, right? Unless there's like an imminent threat to your life, we will not show up. If you're calling to us about something where there was a domestic violence incident and the person's gone, we won't come, right? They're literally telling you, we will not respond. We don't care. How do you think they have the privilege to do that? Because they're not liable. They don't. The government is not a person, right? It has no emotion. It's not benevolent. It's not a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's an indifferent thing. It doesn't care. And the law and the courts back the government and don't care about you. The only person that can look out for your safety is yourself. So we have to figuratively and literally arm ourselves with that knowledge of what we need to protect ourselves.
So therein lies the problem. And I'm gonna be really quick, Tamel. When the cops weren't able to come, a lot of my female friends said, oh, Sheila, you should take a guy with you. You should take a guy with you. And so it was like, okay, how do I take a guy with me without endangering his life, liberation, right? Or if he's somebody who has a felony, risk him going back to jail just to help me out with something that cops should be able to help me out with. So my next question, and then I'm going to pass this to Tamel, if Black men can't have guns or Hispanic men in our communities, because they may have felonies. Aren't there white men who have felonies and still are able to get gun permits? And if so, how does that occur?
Repeat the question one more time.
Black men, Hispanic men, men living in urban areas they can't get a permit for a gun, to my understanding. You can correct me if I'm wrong, right? Well, if they have a felony.
But the criminal justice system is very unfair. We've personally been involved in a lot of situations helping people where predominantly, super majority of the time, the minorities and African Americans are being treated and discriminated against disproportionately over, let's say, a white group of people that may have some type of silly record of some sort and being treated differently. Case in point, over 93% of the people that are incarcerated because of gun control violations are people of color. I know of many instances and cases where white individuals have been given PTI, which is pretrial intervention, a slap at the wrist, or their case gets dismissed. But if you're living in an urban neighborhood or you're a person of color, the criminal justice system treats you completely differently in regard to a firearm felony of some sort. And that's why we're fighting every day to try to change this system, because the people that need it the most are the ones being discriminated against disproportionately against their ability to be able to protect themselves.
But to answer your to answer your question that I think went unanswered, the short answer is no. If you have an adjudicated felony on your record, you will not pass it's electronic. The database goes through the FBI. If it's on your record, it's agnostic to your skin color. You're not going to get through. What he's talking about, which is true, is that depending on what jurisdiction you're in, the judicial system in your locality may behave differently with you based on the nature of the crime, the nature of where you are. Let's put it this way: a judge in an urban neighborhood is going to be much harder on gun crimes than say there's two people with no record, right? Someone in Newark, someone in South Jersey, in the middle of the Pinelands. Those judges are more inclined to maybe give a pass, right? It's a cultural thing. But to answer your question, once you're adjudicated, no, there's no bias, because it's agnostic to what you look like or what your name is. It's just, hey, you have a felony on your record. You're not getting through the check. The check rejects you. And that's done by a national FBI check. It has nothing to do with New Jersey.
Thank you. Tamel?
Yeah.
I think one of the ways also people are getting around receiving in suburban neighborhoods, receiving the right to possess arms is through expungement. Because you guys can maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm under the impression that if you get your record expunged, then you can obtain a gun permit. But there's still discriminative practices even in that aspect, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, there is a way you can clean your record, which is why we always recommend individuals get a full background check, do it privately on themselves, because you're going to forget about that one instance 20, 30 years ago while you're down to shore at the bar, or you're at some game after, some bar after the game in Prudential Center, that there was an incident of some sort. So you want to make sure that you get your record double checked, make sure it's clean. And it's really good to get your record expunged to begin with, so that it doesn't prohibit you from any other type of employment opportunities. But it will be brought up if you do have something on your record.
But if you get all of your if you get your entire record expunged, you can obtain a gun permit, right, legally?
Theoretically.
A possession permit.
Yeah, possession.
Which means you can have it in your home and only transport it under specific circumstances to specific places. It does not give you the authority to carry the weapon on your person in anywhere public. You can't walk around with it in a holster or something. It's just a possession. It's a possession and purchasing permit.
Okay. Another thing, well, this is pretty much more of a comment as far as, the police not being obligated to protect you. And I think a lot of the Black and Latino or urban community, I think they fall victim to the false notion that police have an obligation to serve and protect.
Right.
And they do have an obligation to serve and protect. But I think what a lot of people fail to realize is not to protect people, it's to protect policy and property. I think that, their oath is to serve and protect, but we never say what. We assume that it's the people. The obligation is to protect, like, if you ever a person got gunned down on one street corner and a house is burning on another, they're going to go to that house first and put that fire out before they tend to that person that got shot down, because their obligation is to protect property and policy. So if we get out of that notion of not expecting them to serve and protect people, I think it'll be an easier job for you guys when you go into the urban communities and relay that message that, they're not here to serve and protect. Because that's the first thing we do when we pick up the phone. And even at protests, we say, you guys are supposed to serve and protect. But that's not the case. You're not supposed to serve and protect us. You have no obligation. So I think that we need to realize that that's not, that is a false notion, that we think that cops' obligation is to serve and protect the people. And it's not.
There's a great book. It's called Call 911 and Die. And the whole book is about talking about hundreds of cases where individuals have called the police, said, this person, my stalker, or whatever situation it may be, he's or he or she said they're going to kill me. And the police say, sorry, unless a crime has been committed, we can do nothing about it. We're not your personal bodyguards. And ultimately, these people are found dead the following day or subsequent to the complaint that their life was in danger. But the common theme there is the government telling us we have no duty to protect you unless this person or individual commits a crime. We have no legal obligation to come out and do anything about it.
Their sole job is to enforce the law, right? So their job is to give you a traffic ticket, to look for a murderer if they feel like it. You don't even have recourse to compel them to do something, right? Like I can give you personal anecdotes. I've had people in my immediate family that have been victims of crimes, and I present them irrefutable evidence of the crime, and the police and the prosecutors have told me, yeah, well, we don't feel like going after that because we don't think it's going to be fruitful. And there's nothing I can do. What can I do? If they tell me they don't feel like looking for the guy, there's nothing I can do legally. Let's reverse engineer it. Every day in America, in Chicago, Washington, D.C., L.A., sadly, Newark, somebody dies, right? Somebody dies from some sort of murder, right? This is an unquestionable statement. Every day someone is murdered in America. Have you ever heard of the concept that the estates of the deceased sue the police department for failing to stop the murder? Have you ever heard that in your life?
No, I haven't.
Right. No. And this is what I tell people when they say, oh, well, that can't be true, that they don't have to protect you because it says protect and serve and it's their moral obligation. I said, no, they're morally inclined to want to protect and serve you, but they're not legally required to protect and serve you. It's the courts literally back them up. And like I said, if that were true, if they were legally liable for protecting your life, every single police department in America would be bankrupt, because every time someone gets robbed, gets killed, gets defrauded, it doesn't have to be just murder. If somebody robs my house and I could sue the police department and say, well, you were supposed to be watching the neighborhood, you didn't stop the robbery, they'll laugh at you. You can hire a $15,000 attorney and go to your municipal court and sue them. The judge will laugh at you and throw it out. They have immunity. So like I said, if you don't believe my words, just look it up. Has anyone ever sued a police department for stopping a murder? Never. It's never happened because it doesn't exist.
This is so just tragic. This is why I think it's important that the education is important. This is just why, and it's like we're fighting a losing battle almost, right? If not exactly that. And we don't know how to get the ball. We don't know how to get back on offense, because it's almost like, how can you when you don't even know the rules to the game? The ref is making, I'm just using an analogy, the ref is making calls and something is just not going right, but you just don't know what it is because we just don't know. We talked earlier, Alex, you mentioned an anecdote about a family, I think you said a Black family, that they were being published to do something, like in terms of advocacy for guns, for families that have guns. And they said that they wouldn't accept that, or they wouldn't.
Yeah, that was part of the project Daniel was talking about advertising. We have a campaign, a billboard of a very simple Black family, And our messaging was, you know, your life is valuable. And
it actually said, it's very simple. It says, your life matters. And it has a picture of a Black family. And then it says, the police have no legal duty to protect you. That's the sentence that they are censoring. And below that, it says, contact us if you want to lawfully get a firearm. We'll help you lawfully get a firearm. Ironically, they don't have a problem with the Black family. They don't have a problem with your life matters. They don't have a problem with you can help people lawfully get a firearm. They have a problem with saying the police have no legal duty to protect you. That's how ignorant even these media companies are. Now, I'm going to give you an anecdote, and I'm not here telling you. I don't know what your position politically is on this, but it's worth noting. These groups, abortion, right? That's a controversial issue for people. These companies all sponsor pro-abortion messages in urban communities. If you go in Newark, you can find abortion billboards everywhere. This company, one particular one, which I'm actually going to eviscerate in about an hour when we do our broadcast, but we went to them with this sign and they censored that line. And I said, let me get this straight. You will go into the Black community and advertise to kill Black babies. But when I want to go in the Black community and speak to them about a legal reality so that they can protect their life, you don't want to protect Black people. And they had no answer. And they actually ignored me and they won't talk to me anymore. I mean, and again, you may be pro or against or for that abortion issue, but the fact is, if you're for free speech and you're for protecting life, you should be for protecting life of everybody, right? So
Right.
It's a cultural problem, it's a political problem, and when you boil it down, when you come to the painful realization that the government has no duty to protect you, what are we left with, Sheila? How can you protect yourself?
And so that's how I got into this entire thing with the guns, because if I didn't have a way to defend myself, right? And like you said, the politicians, they have detail, they have people around them with guns, but what about us? And then the police won't even come. And so, like, how do the men don't have guns because a lot of the men have felonies, right? Or it's hard to get a permit. Or you have all the young kids, and I'm a teacher, right? So I know for a fact, these kids that can't even read and write, they're running around here with a gun. They don't think linear at all, but they have lots of guns, right? And that's just a recipe for disaster. And when I get in a situation and I'm trying to help kids, and the parents don't even realize that they're supposed to advocate for education and come out and vote and be participatory, they don't see my point of view because they haven't been educated on the things that I am learning and getting educated on. You understand what I'm saying? So that's why it's important that we continue to educate each other on these things. I see people on the thread right now. Thank you for TJ for sharing that. She says, this is interesting. I never knew that. And a lot of this is like things are going on around, but it's so many, like you said, it's just distractions. And I don't know if you said that word for sure, but that's definitely what it is.
Yeah, exactly. And Sheila, it really bothers me so much that as I was getting involved in this movement, and I was never raised around guns. I got started 8, 9, 10 years ago on this issue. And I would be talking to all my white friends in the white suburban neighborhoods about going to the gun range, getting a gun and shooting, practicing shooting and everything else. And it was like talking about going to the movie theaters. There was no pushback. There was no weird moments, I guess you would call it. But whenever I was in my, back in Newark, hanging around with my minority friends, I guess, my, African-American friends, my Hispanic friends there, I said, hey guys, let's go over to the gun range. The message was completely different. The response was completely different. And it scares me to think that in modern America today, the African-American community doesn't even know that they can lawfully own firearms. The amount of times I've been told, I'm Black, I can't own a gun. I will get killed. The government will kill me. And I'm not exaggerating when I say these things. I mean, that is the scariest part of this all, about how we as a community and as minorities do not know that we can even lawfully own guns, that it's just like some white privilege of an issue. And that's the part that really hurts me the most. I had the opportunity to interview a Black legislator in New Jersey, and he was boasting and I'm sorry, not boasting. He was just condemning me about talking about guns and saying there is no constitutional right to own a gun.
They don't want.
This is an African-American politician in New Jersey saying he is so conditioned to about this anti-gun rhetoric, this anti-self-defense rhetoric, that even he doesn't know that as an educated African-American that you can lawfully own a firearm. The first thing they did when the slaves were freed was pass laws against banning slaves from owning guns. That is historically accurate. You cannot dispute that. As the slaves were becoming freed, the first thing they did was pass laws to make sure that freed slaves cannot own guns. And that sentiment and that mindset still exists today in modern America and modern New Jersey. And that is the biggest calamity of it all.
Yep. Well, I think, he's 100% right. And, a lot of times, even me growing up felt like, it was impossible to legally possess or own a firearm. I think a lot of it has to do with how we take the marijuana issue. A lot of people thought it was a big deal to smoke marijuana or have marijuana in possession until now it's becoming illegal. It's not that big of a deal anymore. That's the same thing with guns. The reason why there's a lot of fascination in the urban community is because it's something illegal. And it's something you deep down, they feel like they're not supposed to have. Most of the states that have low violent crime issues are people who mainly have legal gun permits. Like, that's just a fact. Like, a lot of, gun violence don't take place with people who, if I come in contact with you, I know you got a gun, and more than likely you think I got a gun. Most of the time, nothing's gonna happen. And,
I've lived in one of those states, and I can tell you, when you go out in public to a supermarket or whatever, you're in the mall, there's actually like a look that you exchange with people, because I lived in a state where you could carry before. And when you carry, you bump into someone, you look at them, you see them, it's called printing. It's like where you can see where the holster is under their clothes. And you kind of look at each other and you just give that nod. It's like, what's up? And you're cool. Everyone's a brotherly, and they move on. And it's exactly what you said. When you go up to someone's house, you're like, I'm not going to rob this guy. He might blow me away. And look at this. If you look at the states that have you're 100% right. The states that have the constitutional carry, the most liberal in the traditional sense, the most liberal gun laws, have no violent crime, right? It has nothing to do with race. It has nothing to do with class, right? Because there's plenty of poor people in these Western and Southern states. There aren't epidemics of crime. The epidemics of crime are centralized in urban environments. And those are the environments where you can't have a gun. Like, that's the irony is delicious, but these people don't understand it. I mean, you hit it on the nose. You got it exactly right.
So listen, Charmel, do you have another question? Because we're about to close them out because they have another place to be, and we have an appointment at 8:30.
No, go ahead. I just like to appreciate them guys, and hopefully you could come back on.
Yeah.
And I would like to, I guess Sheila can get you my contact information. I would like to, support you guys when you guys are going out and about and advocating for these laws. I would definitely like to, lend my hand and support in you guys' endeavors. And I think before we sign off, I think what would be most effective is looking to the churches, speaking with the church members, and they are real prevalent in our community. So, if they cover a lot of ground, I think contact church members and things of that nature. But anything you guys need as far as advocating on behalf of gun laws, you can count me in.
Yeah,
absolutely. We really appreciate that. And this is a group effort. This is a group effort, and we hope you'll be one of our voices when we go out into Newark. And I want to go back. I love Newark. I miss it a lot. I think it's a great city. It is one of the best places I ever lived. And unfortunately, I didn't have the right and the ability to protect myself there. But if you can set us up and help us out with getting this message out, we would greatly appreciate that. If you know any church leaders, I know I've worked with many in Newark before. We're going to be reaching out to them as well to help, put together some type of meeting so we can all talk about this and see how we can unite to fight back and end this racism and this discrimination that occurs when it comes to your right and our right to protect ourselves.
And like I said, we're trying to get this billboard up. And if we can pay for it, it would be up in 2 weeks. We can't even get someone to approve it. So the moment that goes up, you better believe that Alexander and I are going to be on the ground in Newark, reaching out to the community, educating them on this, and getting them involved. Because honestly, this is nothing short of a civil rights travesty, and I want to see it overturned.
Well, I think, you know, in New Brunswick, I can host you guys in New Brunswick. That's easy.
My wife used to teach in New Brunswick.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. We both went to Rutgers too, so we spent a lot of time there.
Oh, okay. All right, so you spend a lot of time on Eastern Avenue, huh?
Ironically, when I was there, I was underage, so we couldn't technically go to Eastern Avenue, but we definitely partied a lot at Rutgers.
So you snuck into Queen's Tavern. I ain't gonna tell nobody.
What was the one at the end? Is that it used to be Nightclub? Yeah, that was the one I think we used to go to.
Okay, all right.
Listen, they have to go. So thank you so much again for
Thanks
coming.
for having us on.
I promised I was going to get you out on time. I held to it, and we're going to reserve the right to call you back again at a later date.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Great to meet you guys.
Thank you, guys.